Recently, China has released a real beheading drill video targeting Taiwan, increasing its pressure on Taiwan even further. In addition, for the first time in history, China has infiltrated a drone into Taiwan's airspace, intensifying its threats. Today, let's take a closer look at this issue. Let's get right into it. Before we begin, I published my first book and merchandise. It's available at Kyobo Bookstore and others, so please check it out if you can. I'd appreciate it. I've actually uploaded a video about this before. Following the United States airstrike on Venezuela and President Maduro's extradition, public opinion in China is increasingly supporting a similar operation against Taiwan. It's unclear if this reflects true Chinese public opinion or government influence, but for a time there was strong support in China for a decapitation strike on Taiwan. China's state-run China Central Television reported that a video of the decapitation operation was uploaded on January 16. The video shows special forces with advanced gear infiltrating a remote building at night. They surround and fire at the building while distant artillery shells are launched. A soldier used a crossbow instead of a gun and, within minutes, killed 4 criminals and destroyed the target, ending the training exercise in the video. Experts said this training footage was released to show the United States they can also conduct such operations. In China, the video quickly became a top trending search term on major portals. China seems to be seriously considering a decapitation strike on Taiwan. During a December 2025 Eastern Theater Command exercise targeting Taiwan, reports said drills focused on eliminating leadership. Some analysts in China believe a decapitation operation could lower casualties and damage. For the first time, China violated Taiwan's airspace with a drone. A Chinese surveillance drone entered the Pratas Island's airspace in the South China Sea, stayed for 4 minutes, and was later identified as a WG-7. The Taiwanese military stated that the drone was flying at an altitude beyond the range of their air defense network. After the Taiwanese air defense forces issued a warning through an international radio channel, the drone left. This gives us several implications. First of all, it clearly shows that Taiwan is having difficulty responding to China's advanced drone capabilities. Also, this incident can be seen as China demonstrating its ability to violate Taiwan's sovereignty. Xi Liao, deputy director of the Atlantic Council's Global China Hub, noted another vulnerability China has found. He added that China may repeat these actions to demonstrate they can enter Taiwan's airspace, while Taiwan doesn't appear to respond strongly to such violations. Taiwan is very cautious, fearing a strong response to China's provocations might cause war. Of course, the Pratas Islands are not right next to Taiwan. They are located about 420 kilometers south of Taiwan's main island. The Pratas Islands are also persistently targeted by China because they are a key passage for both United States and Chinese submarines in the event of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. China's continued focus on the Pratas Islands is quite significant. China has held large-scale drills using fishing boats, recently mobilizing thousands to form a maritime barrier hundreds of kilometers long. On January 12, 1,400 boats created a rectangular formation stretching 320 kilometers north to south. On December 25, they also mobilized 2,000 vessels to conduct drills in the waters near the Air Defense Identification Zone. The Chinese government has made no official statements regarding these fishing boat activities. Foreign media said these drills likely aim to test civilian response to a potential large-scale mobilization order in a future emergency. These small fishing boats can be quite threatening. 1 or 2 aren't an issue, but thousands moving together can disrupt enemy warship routes or confuse radar. Such drills are now frequent. China is ramping up pressure on Taiwan. China is especially interested in decapitation operations, but whether it could succeed in such operations on an actual battlefield is doubtful. Most military experts remain skeptical. It is true that China has, for several years, built life-size models of key national institutions, such as the Taiwanese presidential office and the legislature, and has repeatedly trained for scenarios involving striking major government buildings, eliminating key figures, and kidnapping scenarios. If you look at this alone, you can't say that they are completely unprepared. However, there is an unbridgeable gap between training and actual combat. Director Joshua Arostegui of the United States Army War College's China Land Power Studies Center noted that the United States military's actions in Venezuela reflected decades of counterinsurgency experience, not just isolated raids. It was the result of combining the lessons learned from successes and failures in conflicts around the world, along with advanced intelligence fusion capabilities that integrate human intelligence, signals intelligence, and even satellite intelligence. The consensus is that China hasn't reached this level yet, mainly due to the Chinese military's lack of real combat experience. In recent decades, the Chinese military has lacked large-scale combat experience, only participating in earthquake relief in Nepal, anti-piracy in the Gulf of Aden, and border clashes with India. Meanwhile, the United States military has frequently carried out real missions in the Middle East, Central and South America, Africa, and Europe, continually updating its special operations expertise. In decapitation operations, the number of variables increases explosively in the execution stage compared to the planning stage, and what is needed at this time is not manuals, but the sense and judgment accumulated in the field. This difference is difficult to catch up with in a short period of time, and the gap in information warfare capabilities is also critical. Before the Venezuela operation, the United States had the CIA track President Maduro's locations, movements, routines, and associates, and provided real-time support to ground forces during the operation. This information penetration stems from a long-standing overseas network and local cooperation, not just technical issues. China is also strengthening its intelligence capabilities, but due to its closed political structure and limitations in overseas human networks, it is not easy for them to obtain the same level of precise information. Additionally, there are problems with electronic warfare and command structures. China has a 5-theater command system, but lacks a unified special operations command. This structure limits the ability to quickly coordinate special forces from different theaters and military branches for a single mission. A decapitation operation requires precise coordination of cyber and electronic warfare across the Air Force, Navy, and ground special forces. Assessments show China still trails the United States military in this integration. Given these conditions, if China launches a decapitation operation against Taiwan, it will likely be prolonged or exposed early, risking international intervention and escalation into full conflict. Many military analysts think a major gap remains between China's display of preparations and actually acting on them. If China acts recklessly despite this gap, most believe it will likely cause an uncontrollable disaster instead of a successful short-term outcome. So what would happen if a decapitation operation was attempted and failed? The price China would pay for a failed decapitation operation would not be limited to simple military losses. The first thing to collapse would be all this time, China has continuously sent out the message that its precision strike, information warfare, and special operations capabilities have already reached the level of a major power, and the recent release of the decapitation operation training video is also part of that effort. But if they actually fail to eliminate the Taiwanese leadership in a real situation, at that moment, the Chinese military will suddenly be perceived not as a capable force, but as an army that only talks big. This isn't just Taiwan's problem. It would quickly weaken China's military deterrence in East Asia. Neighbors would stop seeing China as an absolute threat, strengthening checks and balances against it. China's biggest fear. It would also justify international intervention. By its nature, a decapitation operation is clearly a preemptive strike, and if traces of the operation are exposed while the Taiwanese leadership survives, it is highly likely to be defined as a failed act of aggression. If this happens, the United States, Japan, and even European countries would have grounds to justify intervention not just through diplomatic mediation, but also on military and security grounds. The scenario that China wants to avoid the most is the internationalization of the Taiwan issue, and a failed decapitation operation would be an act of opening that door themselves. If successful, they could quickly gain control, but if it fails, the issue expands from China and Taiwan to affect the whole international order. A key point is the political blow to Xi Jinping, as the Taiwan issue is now directly linked to his regime's legitimacy. He calls unifying Taiwan a historic mission, guiding military reforms and national restructuring toward this goal. If the operation fails to remove the Taiwanese leadership, it would be seen not just as a military failure, but also as a failure of the top leader's judgment. Given China's system, cracks could still form among elites and top military leaders, even without public accountability. Especially from the military's perspective, dissatisfaction could build up over having carried out a risky operation due to a political decision, and in the long run, this could lead to a weakening of Xi Jinping's control. Above all, a failed decapitation operation makes repeating it nearly impossible. Once failure is confirmed, Taiwan's alert system will escalate dramatically. Leadership movement patterns will change, hideouts and command centers will be spread out, and communications will be more restricted. Meanwhile, the United States and its allies will increase intelligence surveillance. As satellite, electronic, and human intelligence become more closely intertwined, the chances of China's movements being exposed much faster than in the past increase significantly. In other words, a failed decapitation operation on the first attempt is not just a simple failure, but results in blocking all future possibilities of surprise attacks. That's why military experts often stress this operation's risks. A decapitation operation can have major political and military impact if it works, but failure brings extremely high costs. You must face lost military credibility, foreign intervention, weakened leadership, and lost strategic opportunities simultaneously. A decapitation operation is more like going all in than a calculated risk, and if it fails, it threatens the Chinese system, not Taiwan. That's why it's said, If a decapitation operation works, you gain everything, but if it fails, the regime is destabilized. What will China choose? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching.